The first man through the cathedral doors was not a priest, not a guard, not a jeweled lord, but a human in a scorched flight coat with blood on his collar, and when the music died, guests turned to stare at the stranger who had just walked into the wedding like he owned the hour. Princess Lyessa stood beside the altar in bridal armor and moon-white silk. One hand trapped in the grip of Prince Vale Torith, the man she had been ordered to marry, and for the first time that day, the fear in her eyes changed shape. Because the human was impossible. Captain Joren Cade had been declared dead 8 days earlier at Black Nebula Gate. His ship destroyed, his body never found. Yet there he was, breathing. Some men arrived too late to stop a war. Humans arrive exactly in time to start a better one. A minister shouted for security, but no one moved fast enough, because shock is a weapon all its own. Joren kept walking down the center of the hall while nobles shrank back as if the dead had returned to accuse them personally. He stopped a few steps short of the altar and tossed a metal data shard to the Empress Regent's feet. Every transmission from Black Nebula was on it. Every altered route, every delayed reinforcement, every order that had sent frontier squadrons to die so this marriage could proceed. Lyessa felt the blood leave her face. Because she had suspected cruelty, she had not suspected slaughter. Prince Vale called the human a trespasser and ordered him shot. But the cathedral windows blew inward in a storm of glass and blue smoke. Not from an attack outside, but from Joren's people. 3 human pilots and 2 palace servants loyal to Lyessa. Panic detonated across the hall. Nobles dropped beneath tables, guards rushed the altar. And Joren surged forward through the chaos. He hit the first guard hard enough to break the line. Disarmed the second, slammed the third into a pillar, then reached the altar just as Vale dragged Lyessa backward by the wrist. The prince drew a polished dueling blade, elegant, expensive, useless. Joren met it with a combat knife. Steel flashed, silk tore. Guests screamed. One cut to the shoulder, one kick to the knee, one vicious turn. And the prince fell choking onto the wedding steps with his own blood staining the vows beneath him. He did not crash a wedding for love alone. He came carrying the corpse of the lie it was built on. Lyessa stared at the human through smoke and drifting petals. And in that heartbeat, she understood the most dangerous truth of all. No one had come to ask her to endure a little longer. Someone had finally come to end it. Joren seized her hand, not gently, not cruelly, just firmly enough to say choose now, and behind him the great hall was collapsing into factions. Officers turning on regent loyalists, servants dragging wounded nobles from crossfire, human pilots holding the side entrances with stolen rifles. Lyessa heard her mother screaming for her to stay, heard the court priest declaring sacrilege, heard Vale gasping curses from the floor. But beneath all that noise was another sound, the sound of her own pulse returning after months of suffocation. Joren looked at her once, and there was no command in his face. Only urgency. I can get you out, he said. But I will not drag you. That broke the last chain more cleanly than any blade could have. Because every person in that empire had claimed to know what duty required from her. Marry, smile, kneel, sacrifice. Preserve the alliance. Preserve the dynasty. Preserve the peace that was never peace for the ones offered up to maintain it. Yet the uninvited human standing in the ruins of her royal wedding was the first person to offer her a choice. So Princess Lyessa tore the marriage clasp from her throat, let the diamonds scatter across the altar, and walked away from the crown lights beside him. Not rescued like treasure, but leaving like judgment. Royal walls can imprison a princess for years. It only takes one human to remind her that doors were made to break. Their escape route cut through the suspended gardens, across servant lifts, down into the old launch vaults beneath the palace. Behind them, the palace sirens began to howl. Ahead of them, Joren's surviving crew fought corridor by corridor to keep a path open. Lyessa ran barefoot by then. Her wedding train shredded away, armor smeared with soot, hair falling from its royal pins, and she had never felt less ornamental in her life. Twice, Joren took fire for her, once across the ribs, once along the arm. And both times, he kept moving. When they reached the vault, a battered human corvette sat powered up in the dark, engines growling awake. The crew chief yelled that they had 1 minute before the lower batteries locked on. Lyessa turned back once toward the palace above. Toward rank, inheritance, history, everything she had been raised to protect, and saw at last what it truly was. A beautiful prison decorated to look like destiny. Joren touched her shoulder, blood soaking through his coat, and said the words no princess in a royal wedding ever expects to hear. Come with me if you want a life that belongs to you. This is where empires fail, not when rebels fire the first shot. But when the princess decides the human was right, the corvette blasted up through the launch shaft as palace cannons woke behind them. And all across the capital, the wedding broadcast cut from holy vows to live rebellion. Citizens watched in stunned silence as the runaway craft broke atmosphere, carrying the dead human who had returned. The princess who had chosen, in the first honest act the throne had seen in a generation. By dawn, every border channel in the empire had the same image on repeat. Lyessa Aereth, standing in a ruined bridal gown aboard a scarred human ship, smoke on her skin and freedom on her face. And the houses that had once bowed to the regent began to calculate a new future. Because kingdoms can survive insult, they can survive war. They can even survive truth for a little while. But they almost never survive the moment their princess stops waiting to be saved and starts leaving on purpose. He entered the royal wedding uninvited and left with the princess because she finally chose to leave with him.